This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Elmec and their EV Duty Smart Home Charger.
Let's think back to 2012. That's when the first electric cars hit the Canadian marketplace. We had the Mitsubishi i-MiEV, M-MiEV, stood for Mitsubishi Innovation EV, and the Nissan Leaf. Now, 8 years ago, doesn't sound like that long, but I remember that these vehicles were just starting to roll out, and seeing them were pretty rare. But fast forward to 2020, the Nissan Leaf is the only one still standing, so it makes it the longest running EV still currently sold in Canada. Our spotlight is on this 2020 Nissan Leaf SL Plus. Now, back in 2017, when this generation was released, it came only with one battery pack, a 40 kilowatt hour battery, which was about 240 kilometers depending on how you drove. It also had a 110 kilowatt electric motor. Fast forward to the 2019 model year, and the Plus was added. Now you get a 62 kilowatt hour battery, good for about 363 kilometers, and a larger 160 kilowatt electric motor. Also, with the Plus models, you have a higher throughput quick charge up to 100 kilowatts. So you could get this charged up significantly faster than the 40 kilowatt hour could, even though there's more battery on this one. Now, we're going to be going over everything about this because we haven't featured a Leaf before, but there are some pretty important things to go over. For 2020, the Nissan Safety Shield 360 comes standard across the range. That has emergency braking with pedestrian detection, rear emergency braking, rear cross traffic alert, blind spot warning, lane departure warning, and high beam assist. You also get on this vehicle the lane keep assist and blind spot intervention system, along with an 8-inch color infotainment system. New for 2020 is also a different pedestrian alert sound on this. It makes a very futuristic sound. They've added an extra speaker in here to make it a little bit louder, so if you're driving along in the city, people will know that you're coming around. The backup sound coming from this vehicle is also pretty interesting. It's different from the front, and honestly, it sounds like I'm on the bridge of the Enterprise and it's time to self-destruct. If you go up to this SL Plus, on top of getting the better electric motor and better battery, you also have Pro Pilot Assist, leather seating, a 7-speaker Bose audio system, turn signals built into the mirrors, that's a nice thing to have, and a hybrid heat pump for the cabin heater. That allows you to take hot air from the outside and bring it into the vehicle, sort of like a reverse air conditioner, meaning you don't have to use as much electricity while you're driving in the winter. We don't have it in the winter right now, so I can't tell you if that works or not, but this was one of the first vehicles to offer it in an electric car. Base MSRP for this 2020 Nissan Leaf SL Plus, $52,898 Canadian. We have $300 for this paint. Now, there's a couple things I want to talk about when it comes to the charging port before we go on the inside. It pretty much ticks off everything we look for from an electric car. The charger port on the front is locked. You can only get to it either by pushing the button on the inside or using the key fob to open it up. The charging port itself will lock when it's being used. It will unlock if you use the central locking system or the dedicated button, but will also automatically unlock once your charging cycle is finished. That may or may not be a plus to you, but it is something to note. And this vehicle has a complete suite of scheduling, both for the HVAC system and charging. You can also set whether or not it's using the higher level 2 charge at the 6.6 kilowatts or a slightly lower one, depending on how you want this car to be charged. You have an LED light on the charging port area, so you can see both of those chargers, whether you're using the regular level 2 or the CHAdeMO level 3, so that's a nice plus. And what we found with this is you can charge and cool or heat the car at the same time. You can even have the car running and have it plugged in. These are all things that we look for when testing electric cars. Essentially, this has a perfect score when it comes to what we're looking for. But let's jump inside now. We'll talk about the interior, both the front and the back seat of this, and then we'll take it on its road test. Well, in typical test drive fashion, the car has been on the entire time that we've been filming it. Now, how does this interior compare, first of all, to other Nissans that we've driven, but also to the other electric cars? Because we have done quite a few. We did the Kona EV, we did the Niro EV, we did the older Soul EV, Bolt EV, and even the e-Golf. So we've tested a number of vehicles in here. It's not overly futuristic. I do like that. I like when my electric car feels like any other normal car. However, they've put this weird gear shifter on here. I don't get it. It was too difficult to just put a regular gear shifter on here. You guys had to go with something weird. It's just strange, okay? I'm not against it. It's just, you could have put a normal gear shifter on here, but whatever. Everything else makes sense. You have an 8-inch infotainment system. You do have navigation and Sirius XM with this trim. Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are standard on it. We have a 7-speaker Bose system on here. Kind of low on speaker count. It doesn't sound overly great, but I'm sure it's a little bit better than the regular audio system that would come on here. You have a single zone climate control system with a heat system. That is a plus. There's only a couple vehicles like the Kia Niro EV that actually have a built-in hybrid heater system, which takes the hot air from the outside and brings it inside. Think of it almost as a reverse air conditioner, where when you're using air conditioning, you're bringing cold air in and cooling it and bringing it into the cabin. It's kind of doing the opposite. It's taking warm air from outside and bringing it into the cabin. So Nissan says that it will help with energy consumption during the winter months when you're using the heat system, so you don't have to consume as much electricity since it's just using the air coming from the outside and heating it up. We've heated front seats and a heated steering wheel, and Nissan's Pro Pilot Assist system. Not quite the same that we talked about when we had the Infiniti QX50. While it still provides pretty much all the same technology features that we saw on that vehicle, it isn't using that active cruise control system all the time, which is a bit of a bummer since this is an electric vehicle. I would have liked to have seen it. Now, one thing I want to talk about quickly before we take it on the road to talk about how it actually works is the e-pedal system. If you think back to when we did the BMW i3, I discussed how that was a single pedal vehicle if you wanted it to be. The simplest way to explain how that and this system can work is your gas pedal, your acceleration pedal, is used for everything. You put it down to about 15% and you would coast. Put it down more, you accelerate. You let go of it, you start to brake. This has the option for that, which I think is really interesting. So if you like to drive your car normally, acceleration on the right, brake in the middle, that's how you can have it set up. You can drive it normally. But if you turn on that e-pedal, as you start to take your foot off the accelerator, get to about that 15% point, now the vehicle starts to brake. And if you let go of the accelerator completely, the car will eventually come to a stop. So it depends on how you want to drive the car. You can switch it on the fly, you just push the button. So it depends on what you want out of it. I think it's a nice thing that they offer it. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. Some people might prefer they like it. But just keep it in mind, you don't want to turn it off if you're not used to it. That is how that system works. There's also an eco mode, like we usually see on these vehicles. It reduces the actual air conditioning system and your throttle response. But how about the seating and space up here? As a large guy, I find that headroom and legroom is fine. It's not even shoulder room, but my elbows, I just don't quite fit. I feel like the door cards are just a little tight. Most small people will not have that issue, but I feel it's somewhat similar in size when we drove the Chevrolet Volt, not the Bolt, but the plug-in hybrid. I just felt that the interior space on that was kind of tight for the driver as a big guy. Same going on here. It's not the worst experience, but it is a small vehicle. It is to be expected. There's no sunroof, there's no HUD, not a big problem. For the most part though, that's about it when it comes to the interior here. Somewhat similar to other compact vehicles. There is no killer feature on the inside here. It works. Space is a little tight for bigger people, but for the most part, you get what you're paying for. But before we go on our road test, I just want to jump in the back seat. I want to tell you about a couple little things back there first. So yes, I'm behind the passenger because of an important feature. I don't know if you can actually see it where the GoPro is positioned, but you'll see on the B-roll. There are outboard heated seats back here. Nice plus to have, considering the Infiniti QX50 we featured did not have it. Except the button is on the back of the passenger seat. You can't see it from where you're sitting here. You have to just assume you've pushed the right button, and I have to look at the front to see, okay, high is up. I guess that makes sense. Low is down. The thing is, though, there's only one button. So both passengers back here better want to have heated seats on because it's either all or nothing. I don't know. You couldn't put it in the center console area. Just put two switches, one for each side. Come on. But as you can see, I'm sitting back here. I'm sitting straight. My head is touching the ceiling, the headliner here. I guess my width it's okay. It's comfortable enough. But I would not be comfortable back here on a long period. I've put the seat where I would be sitting if I was driving it. As I mentioned, I just wanted to show the heated seat option for this, but yeah, I don't have any real leg room. My legs are touching, and I'm sure I would be pushing into the back of the people who are the person sitting in front of me, but I do fit from a legal perspective, but it ain't going to be too comfortable. You do have more space than you do on the Chevrolet Volt, which is a nice plus, but The crossovers like the Kia and Hyundai products, they offer a little bit more headroom and space back there. You get what you pay for though. Those vehicles cost a little bit more, but you get a little bit more for it. What can you do? So let's take it on a road test now. Go and see how this Nissan Leaf is when you're driving it, and everything else you need to know if you're in the market to finally make the switch to a fully electric compact hatchback. Get the most out of your 2020 Nissan Leaf Plus with the EV Duty Smart Home Charger. Instead of spending actual days charging up your vehicle, you can get it done in a matter of hours. For more information about the EV Duty Smart Home Charger and their full line of electric vehicle charging solutions, visit elmec.ca. The first thing we need to talk about is energy economy when it comes to this vehicle. We did our 100-kilometer test loop to see how it would do. 16.1 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. It's actually not bad. When we tested the 2019 Kia Niro EV SX Touring, that did it in 15.8. It was a little warmer out, so that might have affected things. But the thing that I found with this, HVAC is a bit of a problem. When we do our 100-kilometer test loop, especially for the EVs, I set the air conditioning or heat to 21 degrees. That's the temperature that I like. It's comfortable for me, so it should be the same throughout. I set this to 21. It was about 18 degrees outside when I started my test loop, and it was a little chilly, so I had to turn it up to 22, and I figured, okay, I'll just mention that I put it up a little bit. And then 10-15 minutes later, I was still too cold, had to put it to 23, and then about 20 minutes later, I was still too cold, I had to put it to 24 degrees. This pretty much never happens. Other vehicles that it happens with, FCA vehicles, I don't know what it is about their climate systems. It's not pumping out. I mean, maybe it is pumping out 21 degrees, but it's not actually climate control because it's not keeping the temperature of the car to 21. So I had to actually use higher temperature in this. That might have affected why this did a little bit worse. Now, we can't use the number that we did for the 2019 Hyundai Kona EV. We did that in the middle of winter. I believe it was like 18 kilowatt hours or something. But the other most comparable and most recent EV that we did was the 2020 BMW i3 range extender, and that did it in 16.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So a little bit worse than this. This is in the middle, and then the Niro a little bit better. But Nissan has a little bit more experience with electrics than BMW and Hyundai Kia. So it works. Is it the best when it comes to being an EV? No, but the EV stuff works really, really well. Everything else about the EV functionality of this vehicle works pretty well. I've kept it in eco mode. I don't use the e-pedal. We've talked about it before. We even talked about it on the outside. It uses a single pedal setup, more or less. I mean, you still will need to use the brake pedal if you have to slam on the brakes, but for the most part, with the e-pedal, you could operate the vehicle with the accelerator. It'll help to decelerate, and it'll help to accelerate. You can have the brake mode, which we're in right now, so it'll slow down a little bit, and there's no change to it if you do the brake mode again. It's not like there's different levels of brake force regeneration, but it works. You get a little bit of consumption back as you're driving along. Single zone AC heater, we've talked about it. We talked a little bit about the hybrid heater system on this. It's too warm out to really test it, but I'm sure that it would help in the winter if we had this vehicle during that time. And it just comes down to space and design. I like the look of this a whole lot more than the first generation Leaf. The interior, as I mentioned, it's a little tight on the front for me. Backseat space, not super usable if you're a big dude like me. But the average people who are buying a vehicle like this, the subcompact crossovers, the compact vehicles like this that are in the electric market, it's going to be fine. It's pretty comparable to everything else we've tested. This ends up being just a little bit cheaper than the Kia Niro EV SX Touring, about $1,600 when you compare a 2020 and a 2020. Now the thing is with this, you have less, right? You have a little bit less range. You have a lot of functionality for the EV in here. Infotainment's dated. You have just heated seats up front, where the new slew of vehicles all have ventilated seats, and the heated outboard rear seats on the back. Since there's only one control for it, it's a bit of a pain in the butt. And I also found they didn't really work. I had that running for a bit while we were filming it, and I didn't notice any change on my tushy. So what can you do? It's still a competent electric vehicle. I can see why people would buy this. It's a good thing that Nissan offered a higher capacity battery while keeping it in the same form factor. They say it's just a little bit thicker than the 40 kilowatt hour battery because the cells are denser. That's how technology works. As time goes on, they're able to make smaller batteries, higher capacity batteries in the same space, so you get better, essentially, efficiency. You get more battery pack in the same size vehicle. And that's what's going on with the Nissan Leaf Plus. You'll consider this if you like Nissan, you like their warranty, you don't mind a car that doesn't have a ton of options, but is an EV at the core. That's what a lot of people are looking for. They don't necessarily want all the bells and whistles, they just need a vehicle that can work. And there's been no range anxiety with this. As I've been driving around, I don't even look at the battery percentage on this because I know I've got more than enough that I need. What you're doing in a day-to-day basis, you'll be fine. Even shorter road trips, doing something within 300 kilometers, won't be bad at all. Plus, you've got the option of that 100 kilowatt supercharge option. I like it. It's a little tight on the inside, but it is nice. I'm glad that I got the chance to drive this.